Hi, good to see you. Justin Jolene here with another issue of the Running Specialist Report. And today we're going to talk about how to monitor impact in real-world running with wearable technology. Now, it's well known that overstriding, or basically the horizontal distance the foot lands ahead of the body while running, increases impact and injuries on runners. But the problem is that until recently, there hasn't been a reliable way for clinicians to monitor overstriding or impact during real-world running. This is a knowledge gap that we have, and this exposes runners to significant risk to injury. But new innovative researchers are using wearable technology to analyze outdoor running. And this really cool new research is now being applied to using IMUs, or inertial measurement units, to be able to calculate overstriding and impact in overground running or outdoor running. So there's a couple clinical pearls that I want you to take away. And that is that overstriding is going to increase impact on runners. Most of us know that already, but I want to make sure everyone's up to speed here. Now, specifically, inertial measurement units, or IMUs, are going to accurately identify overstriding. But it's really particular where you're using those IMUs and which type of IMUs you're using. So IMUs placed on the thigh and tibial shank are going to be most effective to calculate overstriding, and specifically IMUs from Neuroxin's MyoMotion and Movella's DOT are going to reliably monitor overstriding. So what's the importance between overground running or outdoor running and treadmill running? What's the difference, and why do we care about understanding if runners have different gait patterns? Well, as we mentioned before, this can really open runners up to injury. And we know that there are some biomechanical differences between treadmill running and overground running. And while they're largely similar, there's some key differences as it comes to impact, or the impact a runner is sustaining. And we see that the treadmill running is going to have less vertical displacement and less peak propulsive forces. And as you can see here on this image, there's going to be less vertical displacement, so the runner's going to be going up and down less when they run. And there's going to be a decrease in the propulsive forces, or how much they're going to propel themselves forward, which is also going to relate to impact. So all of this is going to conclude that running outdoors is actually going to be higher impact than running on a treadmill, which gives us a lot of reason to collect all this information and data from wearable technology of how runners are running outdoors, because we know there is a slight difference. And that slight difference can be quite dramatic, and it can be the difference between over hundreds of miles, the difference between someone sustaining injury and not. So clinicians should have a really good evidence-based method to collecting and analyzing real-world running biomechanics like overstriding. And again, we're going to be using IMUs, or inertial measurement units. However, there's some emerging protocols that can be used. Now, many of these are still under investigation, and we want to acknowledge that there's been a small sample size and that there's been a limited amount of research on this. However, there's an emerging method that we can use in a step-by-step process to analyze overstriding and impact with IMUs. And specifically, you can see on this chart here, or this graphic here, that it's going to start with a warm-up. It's then going to have some time where runners are going to be using different strides on the treadmill. They're also going to put on the sensors. Then they're going to have different cadences under different trials, so 30-second trials, a little break, and then they're going to have some overground running, and then some overground running collecting all the data that you want to collect with the IMUs. So let me walk you through this step by step so you understand what to do for your runners. So first, you want to get that runner on the treadmill for 8 minutes, 6.7 miles per hour. And you're going to give them different cadences. You can give them 150, 160, 170, 180, 190 steps per minute for 1 minute each, again at that 6.7 miles per hour. To make sure that they're doing that correctly, let's use a metronome to make sure that they're following along and using that metronome for their cadence. Now, we're going to give them a pause, a break. We're going to attach those IMUs to the thigh and tibial shank. That's really important. I'll show you a picture of it down below so you know exactly where to attach it. You're going to calibrate the IMUs, and then you're going to collect some treadmill running. So you're going to have them run on the treadmill. Again, the IMUs are attached at the thigh and tibial shank, so we'll be getting data from those, specifically the angle at which the thigh and tibial shank is going to be at when it impacts the ground. and that's really important. So we want to again have them go at 6.7 miles per hour, and we're going to give them a random order of 30 seconds at each of these different cadences: 150, 160, 170, 180, and 190. And it gives some variation, and it also gives us a baseline. Now we're going to have that runner take a 5-minute break, and here comes the important part. After a little warm up outside, we're then going to collect the overground running IMU data from the thigh and tibial shank, specifically the angle at which the thigh and tibial shank contact the ground at initial contact. They can go at their preferred running speed and their preferred running cadence, and we want to collect information or data for at least 5 minutes. So let me show you where we're going to attach those IMUs. So you can see here's the thigh and the tibial shank. And that's going to be an important factor because actually in some of this research, we found that they actually attached IMUs to the foot, which is where you'd think we'd want to calculate overstriding. But there's a lot of differences: dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, the foot contact angle. And that actually was found that while the foot can have some influences on peak braking forces, unfortunately, we actually see that the thigh and tibial shank are our gold standard for being able to analyze overstriding. So what do we do with all this information and data on overstriding? Well, again, as I mentioned before, thigh and tibial shank is where I attach these IMUs. However, there's some normative data coming out and normative values coming out for what is overstriding. However, there's been limited research and a limited number of sample size or a limited number of participants. So we want to take this research as a little bit of something that is emerging and has somewhat low evidence. Now, overstriding at the thigh is going to be 24.1 degrees, and overstriding at the tibial shank is going to be 7.72 degrees. Now, some important things that we can use this information for. Again, as this is emerging data, we want to use it as a reference point. However, we also want to know that future research is needed here. Now, what is this IMU normative value is going to tell us? Well, it can give us some really good information on outdoor running, but it can also give us a way to provide biofeedback to runners after they're running outside, and it helps to reinforce gait retraining. It can also help us remotely monitor runners' risk to injury. If they go run outside, maybe over a couple miles, 10 miles, we can get some real world data, especially if they're doing that multiple times. And then lastly, we can analyze how much running economy and running fatigue is taking place with some of that outdoor running. How does their running compare from the beginning of their run to the end of their run? That can be really important data for people that are running long distances, especially if they're trying to get a certain time or PR. Now, again, not all runners are necessarily going to need calculations of overstriding. Maybe you do a slow motion video capture, or maybe you use the inertial measurement units on the treadmill. You don't see any risk for overstriding. You have them do a trial of running outdoors. You don't see any overstriding. This just may not be their issue. So that's okay. However, some runners might be very applicable. They might be diagnosed with medial tibial stress syndrome, or patellofemoral pain syndrome, or Achilles tendinopathy, or maybe some plantar fasciitis. All those are going to be impact-related injuries and are going to be very, very important when it comes to measuring the overstriding and impact runners are sustaining. However, practitioners should really know that not all IMU brands or inertial measurement unit brands are going to measure overstriding. Now, the two best brands are going to be the Neuroxin's MyoMotion and Movella's DOT, as they're going to allow for sensors to be placed at the thigh and tibial shank, and that is going to be how they're going to calculate overstriding, or at least how this new research is calculating overstriding. Now, it is also important to note that other brands may say that they're collecting overstriding, and I would love to see research on the validity and reliability of that overstriding. However, currently brands such as RunScribe, Stride, Run Easy, ViaMove by Dorsify are not able to monitor overstriding by calculating angles at the tibial shank and thigh. So in summary, we can definitely identify that overstriding is a common reason, arguably the most common reason runners sustain impact-related injury. Now, inertial measurement units, or IMUs, can accurately identify overstriding during real-world running, which is really important because it's going to help us make all these clinical applications. These IMUs should be placed at the thigh and tibial shank, and that is going to be the most effective place to identify overstriding, and it's going to be calculated by the angle at which there's foot contact, or basically ground contact, when they're landing on the ground. So when the runner runs, we want to calculate what's the angle of the thigh and tibial shank to better understand overstriding. Now, normative values are going to be 24.1 degrees at the thigh and 7.72 degrees at the tibial shank. And this gives runners a reference point to be able to monitor gait retraining, risk to injury, and analyze run economy and running fatigue during outdoor running. Again, these numbers need more research behind them, but these are some initial emerging values. However, not all brands of IMUs are going to necessarily measure overstriding in this way, and both the Neuroxin's MyoMotion and Movella's DOT are going to be used to overstride or calculate overstriding from the tibial shank and thigh. However, brands like RunScribe, Stride, Run Easy, ViMove by Dorsify aren't going to be placed at the thigh and tibial shank, and they are therefore not going to measure overstriding in this way. Please let me know if you have any questions. I hope this is helpful to make some assessments of overstriding in runners and during outdoor running. In the meantime, have a nice day, and I look forward to seeing you soon.